What up? What up? Good afternoon, good morning, evening, wherever you are. Thank you for joining me. I really do appreciate it. And yeah, we missed last week. Um I got back from a trip and I was a little bit under the weather. So we had to take that one off. Also, I was literally exhausted from the Hong Kong Nat situation. For those of you who don't know, me and Josh basically did the commentary for Hong Kong Nats. And did so in a kind of unorthodox way where we literally just like stayed up for like so many hours. Just he had more time to prepare, but I literally just had a normal day and then just 24-hour did it, and then immediately got on that type of sleep schedule, aka total disaster, right? And yeah, so we did what we could, uh, the things we do for the game that we love, right? So we were exhausted. We needed a little bit of time to recoup, so we had to take the week off. And as somebody in chat mentioned, they thought this was a tier list episode. Uh, I've made two tier lists in the past 3 days. I think I did one with the team with Josh, Aaron, and Damien. That's already on the channel, and then one that's going to drop on, I don't know, whenever they drop, um, with the Breakpoints podcast that's around the corner. So I thought that we covered the bases. However, anybody watching in chat, if you have a specific question, I know in my tier list, I typically break things down really finely in a particular way. So if there's anything that you actually want to know or want me to cover, feel free to throw it in chat. I would love to cover that for you. Although I don't want to take the time to do an entire tier list. And maybe we just do like a meta synopsis kind of situation toward the end of the stream while everybody's in here. Maybe that's the way that we do it. If anybody is interested, I'm more than willing to accommodate anybody in chat. If value is what we're talking, I want 90 minutes of how the fuck we calculate value in Acilia. That would be the hardest, right? But Acilia is actually a very important topic of today, not directly, but indirectly. So the topic for today, I know the appearance of it is not 100%. Oh, this is exactly what we're talking about. Well, I want to let me go pull it up. I need to. I don't want to. I want to make sure I'm reading the correct thing. When the Breakpoint guys decided to have me on, we asked our Discord about questions for me while I'm there, and basically we threw it in our Patreon channel in the Discord, and then we also just threw it in general as well to get a couple more questions. And I got one really, really good question. And I wanted to dedicate the entire stream, not the entire stream, but a portion of the stream discussing this question. And the question was from Justin Evans. Great fab player, even better guy. And he said, as a fellow old head, what moments do you think fundamentally changed how we play fab the most? He said free space is like Hamilton's Boolander for this. So what I wanted to do was I spent a long time thinking about the answer to that question. And I had like an epiphany, if you will, about the proposition of value in the game of Flesh and Blood and how it's kind of evolved over the past 3-4 years or however long you've been playing. And I made a very recent discovery, or it's not really a discovery, it's something that we've probably kind of known, but I want to lay it out in a way to where just anybody can understand it, because that's kind of where I've kind of built my stream on doing, is kind of breaking things down and going really deep into to ideas and philosophies about the game. So that's what we're going to actively do, is kind of talk about that evolution in the most recent change that I think is really taking Flesh and Blood in a direction. Not saying that that's like good or bad or anything like that. Just, it is heading a way, and we're going to discuss it and we're going to talk about it. Let me get caught up in chat. We can make it a tier list with enough pressure. He's not wrong. Not wrong. The coverage of Nats is cool. Good job. Thank you so much. I think that's Kyle saying that the pod's going to drop tomorrow morning. So there you go. Also, heads up. We used a software where like everybody uploads their recording to get like the best quality, and mine got butchered. So like my video quality is atrocious, but the pod was so funny, and we spent so much time laughing because it was so good that we just had to keep it. We had to keep it because we knew we couldn't like recreate it. So how am I going to choose my PT deck without a tier list by Nathan specific? I mean, I hate that. I hate that. And if I was making a tier list 24 hours before the tournament, I hope you were not relying on me for that. And that's another thing. Like, we're expecting a lot less people on this stream. Obviously, we got a lot of people traveling, and I want to wish those people absolute safe travels if they're not already there. And if they are already there, I wish them the best of time. I've heard amazing things about Singapore and just that city, and I hope everybody just has a blast. And there's that beach party on Sunday. I just hope everybody enjoys themselves, and it's a really good tournament. And then safe travels back as well. So let's go ahead and discuss what I kind of, alluded to with the question that Justin had. In regards to kind of what moments do you think fundamentally changed how we played Fab the most? And so there's a couple ways that you can approach this, right? If you were to ask anybody that question, I think anybody that's playing the game over, say, 2 years would give the answer that Justin gave in his question. He said free spaces, Hamilton Bullander for this, right? Just to kind of clear what he was asking for. And I think that if you asked anybody that's been playing this game for 2 years or so, would give you that answer. They would say the most revolutionary change that happened in the game would be when Hamilton brought Bullander, and it kind of completely changed the premise of value in the game of Flesh and Blood, right? And I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. I think it was a very pivotal moment. However, I think there's one that's actually bigger, and I don't think we fully realized yet how big of a change it is, because it's not as apparent. When anybody that saw the Bullander deck, they were like, wow, I understand how it works. 2 for 8, block some, disrupt some, 2 for 8, so on, so on. So that's very apparent kind of face up. Very easy to understand. The one that I want to present as a much larger change, and a change that hasn't truly came to fruition yet, is kind of predicated on the entire philosophy of how people define aggro, mid-range, and control in the game of Flesh and Blood. A lot of people, myself included, I'm guilty of saying that those decks are predicated on the idea of how long they want a game to last. And in fact, I think there was a slide in one of my learning curve episodes where I basically used that exact terminology. I said, if you want the game to last this long, you're this deck. And I'm here to say I was wrong, because being mid-range, being aggro, being control has nothing to do with that. Has absolutely nothing to do with the length of the game. It has nothing to do with how long you want the game to be. And the way I was able to disprove myself is if you're an aggro deck, by my definition previously, an aggro deck would want the shortest game possible. However, control decks is kind of what you want to play against, right? Like you want to beat up on Oldhim, and like historically, Fi was a very tough matchup for Oldhim, right? So decks that want to go the longer game, a deck that shortens the runway is typically a good matchup for that deck. So if you want the game to go short, but your best matchup is against something that wants to go the complete opposite direction, then there's a fundamental problem with the definition. So I gave it some thought. And I said, what is the actual and trust me, I'm going full circle here to Justin's question. I just want to, have an underlying premise. Aggro, mid-range, and control in the game of Flesh and Blood. Sorry, we got a couple frames dropping. I apologize. Don't do it to me. Hang on 1 second. Okay, I think we stabilized. I apologize for that. So like I was saying, the underlying premise of what I actually believe to be true now, after giving it a lot of thought for aggro, mid-range, and control, has more to do with nothing to do with the amount of time it takes to play a game or your desired length of game, but more of what you depend on to extract value from your cards. Is the actual definition of aggro, mid-range, and control, or whatever terminology you actually want to use. And allow me to explain. If you're an aggro deck, then you have the unique ability to consistently leverage all of your cards on offense. Right? Which seems like, duh, Nathan, no shit. And you're right? That's very common understanding, right? However, it gets a little bit of, when you get to mid-range, it's kind of unique where it has nothing to do with the length of game. It has nothing to do with any of that. It's the fact that a mid-range deck requires your opponent to attack you to leverage the maximum amount of value, which is very important because what that means is and what I'm getting back to actually answering Justin's question, I think that the most revolutionary aspect of Flesh and Blood in recent couple years since Bullander is not Bullander, but it's the fact that you can shift the onus or responsibility of value to your opponent. And you can say, I'm not going to help you extract value from your cards. You figure it out. Or you build a deck that can just do it on your own. Right? Give you an example. Dynamos in Dual Building Warrior. How much value does Dynamos get if I never attack the opponent? And you might be thinking, well, Nathan, how do you win if you're not attacking your opponent? Well, I'm just saying that there are decks that come in and out of the game. Viscerai. Board state decks. Acilio to a certain extent, right? can deny those avenues. Wizard in general can kind of circumnavigate that. But what these decks do is they say, okay, you can build this perfect mathematical deck that swings 9 or 10 with 2 cards and blocks, with 2D reacts for 8, and you get 18 value per turn. That's great. But what if you can't block? And I think that thought process and truly understanding that idea is the most revolutionary concept of recent Flesh and Blood. And you might be asking, okay, well, that's great, Nathan, but how can I utilize that? Or what does that translate to in actually playing the game? And my answer to that is, as I hinted to toward the beginning of the stream, I believe the most powerful thing that you can be doing in the game of Flesh and Blood right now is embracing polarization. I think that you can look at a lot of the design principles in Flesh and Blood, and they have not shied away from it, but more so, I would go as far to say, enticed the aspect of polarization. And I don't think that's going anywhere. I think that is here to stay in the game of Flesh and Blood. And going back to the aggro, mid-range, and control example, and basically saying, look, that is a form of polarization, right? If I run a control deck into a mid-range deck and don't attack them, or have a setup deck or a combo deck or whatever, and they can't leverage value from their cards because of the way that their deck is designed, the net result of that equation is polarization. They have a deck that wants to do something. I bring a deck that doesn't let them do that something. And I think that this is the result of that equation is the reason that we have the good performance of Syndra today. If you ask any content, I don't want to say any content creator, but a lot of them, or even good players, a lot of them, not all, there's some outliers, would say that Syndra is like a solid deck, but it's not doing anything that like breaks the math of the game. It has a good gravy matchup. But like, really, what else are you doing? But she keeps winning. And I think that it's because of anybody that presents that equation to a Syndra, it doesn't matter. No matter what you do in the game of Flesh and Blood, with the exception of disruption, Syndra's going to get relatively the same amount of value. Whereas if you have a deck like Dual Wielding Warrior, and we can also see it in Dual Wielding Warrior, right? What did Dual Wielding Warrior kind of shift to? We saw Hatchet Dories go away, and we went to a more Kasai-driven aggro, but it's not really aggro, but the deck has the ability to utilize the majority of the cards on offense. So therefore, you are not relying on your opponent to extract a decent number of value. If they do engage with you, you have the unique ability to fall back in with good block values, and you can kind of mid-range your way out of it. So effectively, what I'm saying is I went on a tangent about a year ago, kind of stating that aggro was kind of on the downturn in the game of Flesh and Blood. And I think that it's now actually shifting to mid-range being, on the downturn, because there are decks that just won't let you interact on the basis of value, right? You have Earth Heroes that Dynamos won't save you. It's not going to do anything, right? The Earth Heroes. Then you have the Wizard. You have Most Illusionist. You even have Necromancer coming into the equation that is dictating whether you can or cannot leverage value in that way. And if you think about it, it's actually a genius evolution from the player base because one of the easiest ways to manipulate the mechanic in Flesh and Blood of drawing a new hand every turn, which is a relatively unique aspect of Flesh and Blood. The best way that you can leverage that to your advantages is literally ask the question, okay, you get 4 random cards, do something with them. Right? Like that's a great question to be asking. And that's where kind of a deck like Syndra is really getting their value. Is no matter what most of the time, no matter what 4 cards they draw, that's going to be something decent. And there's not too many decks that can operate in that manner that much anymore. They just Assassin can get there, but that's also why we've seen a shift to Slippy, right? There's also Gravy impacting that as well, of course, but just in general, passing the responsibility, looking at your hand and maximizing the amount of value it can produce was good enough in 2021, 2022, right? In today's Flesh and Blood, being able to do that literally is the prerequisite to win a game at a tournament. Not to win the tournament, to just win a game at the tournament. And I think the new avenue of attack to where you can kind of gain an advantage is not ask the opponent whether they can or cannot maximize the value in their hand, but can their deck maximize the value on a turn-to-turn basis on whether you decide to interact with them or not. And I think that that's one of the biggest kind of evolutions in the game. And we've seen this in so many forms with like Noah's Viscerai list, right? How it just sat back, did its own thing, and it said like, it's going to ask you the question, do something, right? We've also seen, like I mentioned earlier, Illusionists. We have, Wizards. I mean, there's all type of decks that just really just ask that question. And I think that it's really changing the game. And it does induce a aspect of, polarization, whether you like that or not. That's just what that design kind of induces. And once again, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that this is how it is. This is the best way to leverage an advantage in the game right now is force the opponent to come up with the way to extract value from their cards. It's one of the best ways you can attack it. Or remove the opponent's ability to ask you that question, aka Syndra, is the best way to do that. Let me get caught up in chat real quick. The thesis of the stream is being slow roll. Yeah, by dropping frames, that's quite the slow roll. I think I've been defining the archetypes in a similar way since around Heavy, when I was trying to explain how 0 for 3s, block 3s worked in Kasai and Dash. Can't block with Traverse if I don't attack you. That's how I figured Zen back in the day. No spike turn. Exactly. What's up, Aaron? Hope you're enjoying Singapore. And good luck at the tournament. I'm rooting for you. DOS plus guaranteed. Guaranteed. If I was in Singapore, that's what I would be playing right now. So I'm right there with you, Aaron. I think we've seen this evolution in the decks that are still on that mid-range axis. Current Verdance is built with 3 less D-reacts on average, and almost all blues convert. Yeah, exactly. And then Josh, of course, mentioning that I love my numbers, of course. So I think that's and it really it changes the game a lot as the player base more and more and more just comes to that realization. What it does is going to create polarization in deck building. And you're going to have to, it's no longer, switchboard plans may go out the window because you have to focus so much on the ability to extract value on your own and not rely on your opponent. So It's an interesting concept, and I'm very curious of what happens if we get another deck that has the ability to kind of not interact with the opponent. We kind of saw it spike up with Florian, with Scepter, and it quickly got shut down by LSS. I'm not saying that that's the reason why, it just did. But with the new, maybe the Guardian chick with the guitar, maybe there's some form of aura manipulation that just requires the opponent to have an answer to something that they may or may not be able to interact with. And it's a very important, very interesting concept, whether it turns out to be true or not. So it would be really interesting to see how they further develop that, whatever you want to refer to it as. Um, Kind of agree, but I think Syndra effectively dealing true damage every turn is different aggro landscape for the defensive decks, whereas before you could generally turtle out top aggro decks. I mean, yeah, you have the true damage, but I don't know if that is that really the strength of Syndra? The true damage? I mean, I think the true damage effectively continues the Masco momentum chains and requires more cards to be blocked with. So any deck that only wants to block with one or two cards kind of has a harder time because you have to keep committing to blocks if you want to stop the draw. I don't think it's really the aspect of true damage. Um, but it's interesting. It's very interesting. Also, around the corner, we got a spoiler for the Guardian Mastery Pack. I'm not going to spoil it. Our Guardian connoisseur, Ed, is going to have the honor of spoiling that card. It's good. I've seen it. It's a really good card. Ed has not seen it, so he has to wait. But that's part of the spoiler. And yeah, I would say that if you've been patiently waiting for Guardian, it might have been worth it. I'll put it that way. It's it's like it's good. It's good. Trying to think of something to compare it to, but I don't know if there is. It's like Terra Sunder levels of good, but not as you can't just throw it in everything like Terra Sunder. It's good though. Your Guardian player be excited. That's all I'm gonna say. Um, I think this is a big part of the fall off of fatigue. So many decks right now can ultra punish fatigue by just not attacking them. Post CYB. Yep. Think of it right, and that's kind of where, um, and maybe that led to maybe that was part of the reasoning behind banning CYB is the fact that a having a control deck be able to leverage value without the onus of or having any responsibility of the opponent to extract that value just broke the mechanics of the game. Which, in my opinion, I think if you look at the nuts and bolts, that was the issue. Um, the result was something that was very annoying to the player base and why we didn't like it. But I think that's the fundamental underlying reason when you really look under the hood. Nathan, you can't do this. You're going to put me back on Guardian. I've been playing good decks recently. Well, I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Just saying. It's a pretty good card. Pretty good card. Syndra gets to have offensive overlap every turn, which is mostly why she's great to me. Right, and there's not that many decks that can guarantee that. Slippy might be one, but even Slippy has some brick potential. Or turns where you don't have the ability to leverage value strictly offensively. Katsu could kind of fit that bill. Dio could fit that bill. But other than that, I think every other deck kind of just relies on the opponent to actually help them generate value by attacking, and they basically get some of their value by being defensive in some form or another. I guess Cecilio or the Wizards in general would be another set of examples. Um, so I just want to share that thought. I didn't want to get like too deep, but just something I realized when he asked the question. I gave it some thought, and I was like, it's kind of interesting that that's kind of how the fundamentals of the game are kind of lining up, is um, being able to fully embrace polarization and get a lot of value from it. Very interesting. Very interesting. Um, so as far as the rest of the stream, I didn't have anything planned. So I'm gonna let chat decide. We can do some gameplay. I can answer questions in chat. We can have a meta discussion. We'll do whatever y'all want. Um, y'all just let me know. Y'all just let me know. I am all ears. Dealer's choice. Oh, this is supposed to be after that. Uh, that's funny. Chat, just so you know, blue surging strike is not ideal. True story. What are your dream 3 sets for next year? First, dream set would be anything with rune blades in it, right? Of course. That's always ideal. I also wouldn't mind one more crack at Shadow Runeblade. I don't have anything against Vinny. Just the Shadow talent really forcing you to do something, which I get the thematic behind it, right? Like it's a lot of power, and you have to pay a price to have it. I get it. But Chain just felt so good because he was fucking busted. That's one. But yeah, Runeblade and maybe another crack at Shadow Runeblade, and that could be the same set. I'm not gonna be greedy. Other than that, I just don't want to go to Volcor. Uh, I don't know, the whole thematics of like burning buildings and palaces. We've done it too much with Hunted and Uprising. Just don't want to see that again. Mistveil, I still got a little PTSD, so maybe not go back quite this soon, but we'll see. Of course, always welcome going back to Arya. Probably my favorite set. No bias, being a Briar fan. Yeah, I trust them. Super Slam is not what I thought was coming. It's very different, astronomically different, and maybe the community likes it. Maybe they decide that they would prefer something else. That's up to them. And I would love to see Icelander again. Yeah, that we'll put it that way. But the new set looks interesting. I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna go in with an open mind, give it a shot. See what happens. But it's definitely interesting. We'll put it that way. And yeah, let's see. Let me answer some of these questions. Holy shit, they just came piling in. Also, I'll be seeing you at Worlds. I need the Briar sign. I will be at Worlds. Got the PTI on lock. Earned it the hard way in Atlanta, so we will be at the World Championship, playing in the World Championship, and hopefully no other tournaments that weekend. If you know what I'm saying, we'll see. It's time for the tier list, value tier list or something. I don't know. I just want to see the SABCD. Who are you playing these days? Gravy, Vinny, Acelia? Currently, I am playing Dio. That is currently my weapon of choice, if you will. I think that the deck has a lot of explosiveness. It removes the need for the opponent to maximize my value. They give you too much room. You can just blow them out of the water. I think it's an amazing pick for the Pro Tour. And it's a blast to play too, looking at the top card, making a lot of decisions. Um, where I kind of got the idea was I liked the aspect of gravy, looking at the top card and having deeper decision lines. But interacting with the grave and setting up the grave, that to me just felt like more of a hassle than like something I enjoyed, just as from a personal perspective. And so Dio was like literally the best part of gravy without the part that I didn't like. So it was just like a natural fit to kind of go there. Um, I enjoy Vinny a lot. I just still don't believe that it's the meta for that hero. My personal opinion. A lot of people say that she's super dark horse, but I'll let them prove me wrong. And if I put her in C tier, then she's probably going to win worlds. But so I'm enjoying Dio right now. I'd love just meta discussion because I am busy at work. We can do some of that after the questions dry up. We can dig into some meta discussion. Play some games. Show us how it's done. Oh Lord, talk about how bad room blades are. You know what? It ebbs and flows. I being a room blade player, I can never complain. If you looked at, I think just by definition, room blade is the best class in the game by number of LLs, right? You have Aurora, Briar, Chain, Viscerai, all LL'd. Your next closest would be Illusionist with Dromai, Enigma, and Prism at 3, right? So we've had 4 Rune Blades. LL. Best class in the game. So we've had our days, right? So if we get a couple troughs every now and again, and we're not the most busted thing, then it's okay. We could deal with it. Let's see. I would like to know if you have a preferred ice cream flavor. So on the day-to-day, it's got to be cookies and cream. However, the less often, like absolute best ice cream is actually butter pecan. That's the sleeper. You don't want it all the time. You know what I'm saying? It's like, but man, when you get it like once or twice a year or something like that, man, it hits, and it hits way different. Maybe that's just a Southern thing, butter pecan, but man, that shit is good. I would dig some LL discussion going into Worlds almost blind. We could do some LL discussion. We could do that. How about some gameplay? What decks have you been playing recently? A lot of Dio. That's where I've been having most of my focus. Do you know how dumb Katsu might be now? I think Katsu's really good right now. The question is can he fix the consistency problem? He has a lot more fluid 0 for 4, so theoretically he should. However, there's still a little bit of a consistency problem. But if somebody solves that, it's actually the scariest deck in the format, because if you know anything about Katsu versus aggro decks, he's always been favored, right? Like, he just has so many on-hit effects that it doesn't matter what the fuck you're doing. If you're not blocking ever, like Syndra, you're going to get dumpstered. He's going to 30-0 you. And just out of nowhere. Just blow him up. And so if he's good against aggro, he's historically kind of decent into control because you can kind of set up a little bit. That's become harder with the absence of Art of War, but maybe there's some tools there to kind of utilize in the arm piece that can be used over and over and over again, depending on how the deck's built. And so maybe that's kind of short up a little bit, but the mid range is, I think, where you have to answer the most problems. Is when you have those inconsistent moments, there's decks that can just move in and kind of punish with a lot of value. There's really not shit you can do about it. So I'm interesting how the Katsu players, maybe Pudding can do it. I don't know. Can kind of solve that problem. But if they do, I'm telling you, it is a deck for sure. Um, no doubt about it. Quick prediction on meta spread top 8 of Singapore. I would say top 8 would probably be something along the lines of a Prism, a Kasai, we'll say a Dio, we'll say a Mario, maybe 2. I don't think any Syndras will make it. I'll put a Gravy in there. I'll put an Ira in there. And like a wild card, like something a little crazy. Like a Jarl, or like, I don't know, maybe a Victor could. God, there's no way. A Cilio. That's what we're going with. Cilio's not even really a wild card. Not anymore. The meme's over. The meme is over. That's what we're going with. What would you bring to Singapore if you were competing? -IO is what I would be taking. What do you think about Elemental Illusionist? Well, I've never been a particularly big Illusionist fan. It felt like in this game, the board state aspect, the continuous board state aspect, is kind of very polarizing in like a bad, tasteful way. However, their take on Necromancer is a very tasteful form of that, because you have decks that maybe they don't have access to a ton of action point economy. Then there's still like a chance, right? They still have at least hope. Whereas back in the day with like Spectra and shit like that, you're just done. Shadow Necromancer is next, I bet, or Shadow Warrior. I don't I don't know. I don't know. I mean, they're doing the. Isn't the next set after Super Slam the first one of next year? Isn't it guaranteed to be Monarch 3? I think that's true. I think the first one of 26 is Monarch 3, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's been said somewhere. And Dynasty was in Volcore. Yeah, it's just too much Volcore. It's too much. I would really like proper Savage Land. See, I would too, and I thought that was the direction that they were going to go with Super Slam. Turns out that's a no go. And I'm interested in, like, the problem is now they can't, right? You can't do Savage Lands without Brute, and they just did a bunch of Brute support. They got 2 new heroes, a bunch of cards. Like, it'll be end of 26 at the earliest, and that's even kind of pushing it. Probably be 2027 before we go to Savage Land, unless they find a way to spin it without Brute. I don't know. I mean, who knows? They do Ninja every other set, so maybe they do just go to the Savage Lands. Who knows? How have we gone nearly 6 years? This many sets without a set in the Savage Land. I mean, I don't know. And we do need one in the Demonastery. That is actual factual. 100%. 100%. Which set had peak hero design thus far? It's Tales of Aria, no questions asked. 0 questions asked. Tales of Aria. You had, sure, it was overpowered. Yes. You will hear no argument on my end of that. But it was fun. Like, like, you had Ice with Oldham. You had Briar fucking shit up with CMH, and then you had Lexi just terrorizing everybody for 6 months. A little long lived, but like I don't know, man. That shit was good. Maybe more of a comment than a question, but what do you think about talent based counters? A lot of stuff Shadow versus Light ends up being too niche. Could LSS lean into more on usable cards? So my theory is on all of that light versus shadow shit. I think that they're trying to develop once the three monarch set, the trilogy. I think that they've said the three monarch sets. They might design like a cube for all of that, and then like those cards now have like a use. Maybe I don't know. I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt because you're right. Like literally 70% of those cards do not matter, won't matter, period. Right? It's kind of like half of bright lights. Um, but maybe there's like some long game where they like have this designed cube at the end when you combine all three. I don't know. I'm just saying. Just an idea. In terms of power flavor balancing, you have to agree that Finn's set is a home run. Power, flavor, and balance. Yes, yeah. I have no disagreement. She's balanced, which Shadow typically isn't, or in Levia's case, he's just bad, right? Or at least historically. I don't think she's bad now, but I'm saying historically she's been awful. Uh Shadow's been awful or broken with Levi and Chain, and then Penny is kind of like just right in the middle there. She has her relevant moments, not busted, and so yes, I would have to agree. From a design perspective, they did a great job. Just for me personally, an enjoyment of playing the hero, it's not on the top of my list, which is okay. I don't have to like everything. I don't have to like every Rune Blade. I'm just saying that my personal opinion, there are better heroes. I don't like a deck saying like you're gonna do this, right? Like I don't know. I feel like it. I don't know. Just not my vibe. I knew you'd be a man of class. uh. Moose tracks. I've heard good things about that. Thoughts on Katsu with new Iris stuff, PT meta? I think it's really good. I don't think people are going to keep it under wraps. I mean, obviously for the Pro Tour, if they are playing it, they will. I think the problem is they didn't get the cards, but like 2 weeks before the Pro Tour, as far as when they got spoiled. So, and Katsu is not the easiest deck to play. So now you have 2 weeks to learn Katsu. I think Kansas City calling will be the breakout tournament for Katsu. I think he'll do fine. I think he'll do well at the Pro Tour, but I think his breakout performance will begin in Kansas City and then on to Worlds. I feel like Starvo is just going to be busted again off the back of 2 Guardian sets, but I want to play Iceland. You're referring to LL. I hate the weird draw, my broken. Well, you have to also. Starvo is just kind of shit right now, to be honest. I know people are going to just assume that it's always broken, but I'm telling you, Starvo without Crown is like kind of dog shit, to be honest. Like your fuse rate is like half of what it was because you can't just look at a 5th card. Um, you lose your Somersault, which was literally your best card. And yeah, I just don't see it being. Will people play it? Will it be relevant in the meta? Sure, but I wouldn't even put Starvo in the top 5 decks in LL right now, in my opinion. Runeblade has any real weakness in their design, like Guardian lack of access to action points, arcane damage in Warrior. The as far as weakness in design, and once again, I'm referring to as a on purpose weakness, so like designed weakness, not an accidental. Roomblade has one of the most, I would say, the highest brick potential than any other class due to it requiring absolute hard ratio of non-attacks and attacks. And if you ever draw more of one than the other, it throws off the whole synergy of your deck, and you have to do this whole risk reward analysis as you play the game, and continually changing numbers. And I think that's the weakness that has been baked into it is, you know, you have a little bit more power because you can do some cool shit, but it comes at a cost of consistency. And I'm perfectly okay with that, obviously, because that's my weapon of choice. No verdants, no slippy. I said 2 slippy in top 8. What do you mean? Oh, you're saying there's no verdants and no slippy. No, you have a question mark. I literally said 2 slippies in top 8. What you mean? Man, I miss Ward State so bad. It's probably unfair though. It was pretty busted. I'm working on an ice illusionist that uses frostbites in a clever way. I mean, I would love to see it. I would love to see it. Is anyone expecting a breakout deck for Singapore? I feel like we already know what the good decks are. I like that Nat's meta was so fluid. I'd be surprised if, I mean, obviously we have the one thing that we need to calibrate on is the ninjas. Does somebody figure out a solid? I said 2 Mario in top 8. That is not what I meant. That's my fault. I meant Slippy. That who the fuck said no? I'll take responsibility for that. I 100% said Slippy or said Mario, but meant Slippy. That's my fault. And let's see. Working on Ice Illusionist. Oh, we already with that one. Yeah, I think the onus is on the ninjas for our breakout deck. There could also be a warrior, I think, with potential. There could be, maybe Dawnblade Dory or something like that. Maybe. It'd be interesting. But you're right. I think for the most part, we kind of have a good read on it. I'm hoping for Light Brute. Man, that would be a hell of a combination. Light Runeblade. I don't know about that. I don't think there are any plain Necromancer cards. Yeah. And I think that is intentional for siloing for power creep. LSS has figured out that they don't have to worry about power creep if they just silo cards off, which from a balance perspective is kind of genius. The question is how long are those cards irrelevant for in the event that something happens to that hero, kind of like the Aurora situation. I don't know. It's interesting. That's a good topic. Why does LSS hate the Savage Lands? You'll have to ask them. Next RNA set introduces Alchemist. We'll see. We just got a new hero. I think or a new class. I think it'll be a while before we get the next one. Do you think they will make a Chaos set, or is it stuck in the expansion slot forever? I think they'll eventually make one. I mean, that'd be a lot of effort to just have it just splash. I don't know. Bolton has the worst deck constraints. No, disagree. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking yellow cards and light cards. Okay. But what you're missing is there can be a yellow card that is also light. So you have one card that fills both. If my Runeblade deck has to be 30 non-attacks and 30 attacks, there is no crossover. And then within that ratio, I now have to build in a blue base. Okay, so now I need 15 to 20 blues. Well, do I take it out of my attacks? Do I take it out of my non-attacks? Which one do I need to lean on for more power? Okay, got that solved. Now, where the fuck's my go again coming from? I got to figure that out. There is way more in a Rune Blade deck. What makes and somebody else mentioned that Ranger is more kind of is the most restricted in regards to ratios, and I hard disagree, because also Rangers get the unique ability to look at more cards. You look at Azalea, you get to cross wrap for a literal 6th card because you have Arsenal, you have 4 cards in your head and then the top of your deck. And then you can even go for a 7th card if you put it to the bottom and draw it with Death Dealer, or you can blind flip into it. So Azalea, on average, could look at anywhere between 5 to 7 cards to meet a certain ratio, or not make sure they didn't have a certain piece. Like, that is way easier. You're forgetting charge, but you can charge anything. Okay, sure. But so once again, you can have a yellow card that's light that charges. So one card can hit all your wickets, every single one of them, in one card. Yes, yellows are inherently below rate, which makes it suck. It sucking has nothing to do with ratios. It is a bad hero and the deck is trash, yes. But it's not because of ratios or restraints. It's because clearly LSS hates warriors, right? No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding. NIMBY is Bolton's greatest card. Didn't LSS like literally dedicate 2 legendary cards to Bolton? He still sucks. Warband, Spirit. Dang. Those could have been anything, chat. They could have gave us like Tunic 2.0. Could have been anything. That was wild, by the way. That was a wild decision. Okay. So let me clarify what I said earlier, and we can do a little bit of like meta-analysis, if you will. And I do not think that there'll be 2 Marios in top 8. I think there'll be 2 Slippies. Let's just get the record straight on that one, because that's fucked. And so, yeah, I'm basically expecting 1 Dio, 2 Slippy, a Kasai, a Prism, and a Cilio, and then another ninja that's not Syndra. We'll do it that way. That's kind of what I'm expecting, kind of thing. And maybe a gravy, of course, as well. It's kind of what I'm. And as far as a meta-analysis, like I mentioned earlier, it's kind of for the most part solved. The question is ultimately what's going to determine the success, or kind of, how the players decide to attack Singapore, is it all kind of revolves around Gravy Bones. And basically, there's this tough spot that you're in if you play Gravy right now, where like Syndra is, people are kind of leaning on it. You're getting targeted with Slippy as well. I mean, there's a lot of different decks that are just kind of really targeting you. And is there enough free matches / equity to bring Gravy Bones into the meta? And, I'll give you an example. Typically, Illusionist, to be take Prism or Dromai or anything like that, if you removed the free matchups, quote unquote, so, anything, because illusionist has that polarization kind of built into the hero. If if you removed that, it would almost always result in it being a bad pick for any meta. Period. Right? And so that's what Gravy Bones, because he's not as resilient to that polarization, like his free matchups aren't that abundant because of the amount of decks that are playing and kind of playing for him existing. Um, it's kind of a risk to bring Gravy. A little bit. Strong deck, unbelievably strong deck, but got a lot of people targeting you. You're basically the number one priority on everybody's sideboard. Everybody recognizes how much of a house Blanche is. By the way, I anticipate Blanche being one of the most impactful cards in Singapore. It's just an absolute house. It does so much in so many different matchups that it's unbelievable. 7 popper, even effects prism. If you throw it at her, you have, just all kind of stuff. And so if you're Gravy, where are your free matchups, and is there enough of them to count on, right? To bring Gravy. Not to say that he folds into the stuff that doesn't. I'm just saying that that's a large portion of why you would bring that deck. And if that's not there, right? And people make the assumption that other players of the PT are going to come to that realization, and maybe Gravy Bones becomes, 5th, 6th, 7th, maybe even 8th most represented deck, has like a huge drop off. Not as bad as Florian, but something relative. Well, now the technical best deck to bring would be a defensively oriented deck. This could look like in the form of Florian. It could look like the form of Victor. It could look like just anything that could defensively posture, mid-range the ninjas and the aggro and Slippy. Maybe have a fatigue plan for Slippy. And then maybe you just give up the Verdance matchup, because now that avenue of attack is much more attractive when you're just giving up, 1.5 matchups, whereas previously you were giving up 2, and 2 in quite the abundance. But Verdance is kind of dropped off. So if you think the way will clear a little bit in regards to Gravy, then it becomes a very attractive proposition to bring those decks. So, but all of that is predicated on the perception of how many people are bringing Gravy Bones. So what could happen is people are scared to pull the trigger, and then therefore they go with their comfort picks and kind of targeting Gravy, but then not a lot of Gravy show up, right? So you have 2 different scenarios in regards to Gravy. Either he shows up and people probably anticipated him showing up, or not showing, vice versa. And or the opposite, where he doesn't show up but we were expecting him to. And then the question or the equation becomes, who benefits the most from that situation? And so in this meta situation specifically, I think that decks that are farthest away from the mid-range category have the most to gain. The question is just, were you right in your analysis of representation for Gravy Bones? That is the ultimate question. That is what we're actively trying to answer. And if you're right, congratulations. You're in a great spot. But if you're wrong, then you're in a very, very odd spot, which is not very, very advantageous. So it's very interesting. And of course, if you're bringing Guardian, I see the idea and the reasoning behind it, but you're going all in on Gravy not showing up, because if Gravy shows up and you lose to Verdance and you lose to Acelia, that's a lot of losses just out of nowhere. That's a tough spot to be in. And I just don't know how much equity you can actually gain being in that spot. So I'm interested to see how it lands. Edge of Autumn and Katsu. How else would you build it? The value conversation with when LSS releases Cleric gets real weird. Um, I mean, that's probably going to be one of their biggest design restraints, other than maybe Dromai's replacement. Dromai's replacement, I would hate to have that job right now because that just seems like a disaster to figure out. But Cleric, I mean, just having an abundance of heal has its inherent risk. And I don't know how they're going to figure that out, but you're right. It's going to be a tough one to solve. But if anybody can do it, it's them. It is them. So that's kind of my idea on the meta. Of course, and then Slippy's just hanging. Slippy's just such a good pick for this tournament, which is why the Gravy Bones players gets a little scared. You bring something like Victor or something like that, and you target the Slippies. You have a good game plan into Slippy. It gets good. It gets to be a good tournament really, really quickly. So I'm interested to see kind of how that plays out. I'll be glued to the coverage, I'm sure, depending on what time it actually goes down. But I'm actually very interested to see how it kind of plays out. Who did Will end up taking to Singapore? Believe it or not, I think he has not made his choice. I don't think he's made his choice. But he was between a couple. I will say it's not what you're expecting. I'll say that much. Josh made a really good deck list for Dory where you side in Decimator Axe for fatigable matchups. It covers a lot of stuff. Seems safe. So I understand the idea of Decimator Great Axe, but like bringing it in, the matchup that you would bring it in for would probably be Slippy, right? And my question is, what purpose does Decimator Great Axe serve against Slippy? You don't win that game by producing more value than your opponent. You win that game by outliving Slippy's threats. That's how you win the game, period. Done. So why do you need Decimator Great Axe to do that? Why can't you just swing Dawnblade? Oh, you tripped up. You had an off turn. Here's a Dawnblade. Do you want to give me a counter? Make a Vigor token with the chest. Just swing it next turn with no cards in hand, right? Those types of plays make way more sense than an axe that doesn't fit half your deck, right? And you might say, oh, well, you need it for the Victor matchup. If that's your thought process on the Victor matchup, you haven't played it. Because there's this little card called Cast Homes, is what we used to call it. And that's the Goldmane Estate. That card will fuck you up if they have riches in their deck. And they'll probably fuck you up with it not having riches in their deck. And they're gonna kill you with one attack for 30 is what's gonna happen. If they're halfway decent at the game. So Decimated Granax does nothing against Victor. It actually makes the matchup worse if you're playing at the highest level. So yeah, like what other matchup are you actively trying to value and fatigue? Because that's the only slot that fits the role of Decimated Great Axe in Dory. Other warriors, it makes sense, but Dory specifically because you have Dawnblade. Just saying. Might just be the consistent 4 damage versus 3 damage. Well, the way that I would approach that situation is, right, you're pitching a blue probably either way. Pitching for Dawnblade allows you to retain threats in your deck, whereas Decimated Great Axe does not. You can pitch a red, swing Dawnblade. You can also swing Dawnblade with a blue, and if they block, great, it's going into your game plan. You're happy. If they don't block and it hits, then you get to make a Vigor token, block your entire hand down the next turn, and then swing Dawnblade for free, right? So the value lines, even though it's at less value, seem way better. Because once again, if you're trying to fatigue somebody, if that's your overarching strategy and you're not trying to value somebody, wouldn't you want them to block? Don't you want a card that doesn't say, "Hey, when you block with a card, it gets worse"? I'm just saying. Like, if I'm trying to fatigue somebody, I want them to block with cards. That's why Winter's Well was so good. That's why, you know, all of that is the way. That's why throwing a Spinal Crush when you get a little bit of accidental tempo is so strong, because you're asking for your opponent's card. Every card they block with is one you don't have to block, which has an astronomical amount of value. So I think the intention is pure and it's somewhat logical in leaning on Decimated Great Axe, but when you really break it down, it's actually going against the strategy you're trying to employ. And that's not even including, if you do have a DGA in your sideboard, are there any other cards that are one thing that should be another to support that when you side it in? I'm talking small shit, like maybe you change your blue, maybe you add, what's that pump, the Felling Swing or something, where the blue one's like a 3-cost pump 4 or whatever. Like maybe you run that in your blue base to support the Great Axe when you do play it. Well, that doesn't do dick for you when you're playing Dawnblade, right? So now if you completely abandon the DGA premise, then you open up your blue base to better cards and so on. So just a couple points that I wanted to present for that idea. Like I said, I think it's logical to come to it, but I think if you really dive down deep, maybe DGA is not serving the purpose that you think it is. Overpowering gets an extra 2 as a reprise. Exactly. And are you more likely to get reprise on a card that diminishes somebody's block value, or one where it doesn't change the block value and actually they get a benefit by blocking? See? Tell you what. Roll Tide. Riptide, just because it makes the clock faster. It's kind of based. All right, chat. If you got any questions regarding anything, like I mentioned earlier, I was expecting this stream to be on the shorter side. We got half the not half, but we had a lot of players in Singapore enjoying their time, and but if you have any questions, throw them in chat. I'd love to answer them. I'm gonna give all of you 15, 20 more minutes or so. Just answer any questions, comments. It can be fab related. It can be not, whatever. We're just, like Abby's saying, we're just vibing. Easy. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. As long as it doesn't involve $5. We're not going to talk about that. No questions about $5. But yeah, if you got any questions, roll them in chat. What hero would I have taken to Singapore? That would be Dash IO. Dash IO would be my take for Singapore. I think that it's an aggro deck that fits really good into the meta, has a lot of anti-fatigue potential with Cog in the Machine. All the aggro matches are close to 50-50. You probably don't want to run into Slippy, but it's not that bad. Good into Prism, good into Gravy, good into okay into Verdance, probably like close to 50-50, something like that. Oh, we still got to talk about LL. Somebody asked about that earlier. I gotta make good on that. We'll talk about LL as well. So yeah, I think Dash.io is in a good spot, and it's just fun as hell to play too. So it is what it is. Bro, where my 5 at? Gundam TCG. Know nothing about it. Haven't played a single game. I have played a little bit of Riftbound, the new League of Legends card game that's coming out somewhere close toward the end of the year. It's good. I've been enjoying it. Been playing with some teammates and some other people in a Discord, and it's pretty solid. I've grown to like the Ari deck. That's what I'm currently playing. Worlds in Philly. I think Philly's kind of mid. From a city perspective, no offense to anybody that may or may not be from there. It's just like, they have like a cool bell that's got a crack in it, some shit like that. But like, I don't know. If you're a history buff, like there's a ton of shit. But like other than that, I don't think there's that much. And I'm hoping that the venue is not in Philly. Because if it's in Philly, well, we got a whole separate problem. Anybody that went to the first Worlds, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Well, I guess the first World wasn't that bad. That was San Jose. What was the one that was kind of? Oh, the LA one, where it was like 3 blocks from Skid Row. It was not it. It was not it. Oh, it was not. So, yeah. But regardless of Philly or not, I'll be there. I will be there. Who all from the guys went to Singapore? We sent Will and Andrew to represent. Venue is in the center of Philly. Gee, okay. I guess you can get a good cheesesteak. The question is, can you eat it before somebody steals it from you? It's not that bad, okay? It's not that good, but it's not that bad, okay? So, can you take a bite out of before somebody snatches it? Oh, goodness. If you could create a card, what class, what hero, what text would you like to see? Oh, Quack, you got me. It'd have to be Runeblade, right? Because that's what we care about the most. Hero would have to go in Briar. And my favorite half of Briar is the Earth side of things. So it'd be an Earth related card. And what I would want it to say. One of my favorite designed cards is actually Tome of Harvest. How simple it is, but like how much it can actually do. So I'd probably do something along those lines. I don't know. As far as what would I have the card do? Huh. Earth, you gotta do something with embodiment. So it's gotta be a blue block 3 non-attack action. That part's done. Now what the fuck does it do? What about like Bramble Spark? What if you mixed like Bramble Spark with like Sting of Sorcery? How would we do that? I don't know. That's as far as I can get. That's my bet. I don't know. Just don't go too far north, south, east, or west, and you'll be fine. Okay. Thanks. Thanks for the advice. Actually, just don't move. Worlds in Bama. See, now we're talking. There'll be exactly 6 people there, but now we're talking. I'll be one of them. How about that? No need to move. Sometimes you have to run. No, they'll find you. Speculation for the keynote. Well, they've already spoiled all the heroes, the set. Um, I don't know. There'll be some shit where like you open a pack of Super Slam and you got like a 0.003% chance to open tickets to WrestleMania 369 or so. I don't fucking know. I'm interested where they go. I the part that I'm most interested in, and I'm actually glad Hamal's in here now. Um, I saw your name and it made me think about this, but I'm curious what direction they go after the treasure pack, right? Because we saw the 1 of 10 thing with, the Dust Till Dawn, the artist signed cards, right? That was like this huge thing that was in the packs that nobody, they never did before. And then they just let it go, right? Like the next several sets, there was nothing that was like unique, right? And I'm very interested in what they do from a collector standpoint post treasure pack because Dust Till Dawn didn't really set a standard. I feel like the treasure pack may or may not have actually created an expectation or a standard in regards to the collector aspect of Flesh and Blood. And I'm curious if they just like let that go. Do they develop something else? Do I don't right? Like how do you? I understand how you reel back from like 1 of 10s, right? Like, oh, that's just something we did. That's cool. But now you got like treasure pack. I don't know how from a product implementation kind of way that you can kind of pull back from that with the player base. Like that doesn't seem it seems like you went way too far in to just dabble in it, right? It seems like it's something that might be here to stay in some form. Obviously, it's not going to be the same. You're not going to have James's collection in the packs. Of course, they're not going to redo that because then it just loses its whole. You keep doing that, it loses all that is special. But after something like that, I'm just curious of how they're going to placate to collectors because it's an important part, right? I'm just curious of how they navigate that or whether they take another step back and like let a couple sets go and then bring something else in, or do they try to keep the steam going, kind of thing? Because I've also heard some criticisms and some praises for the treasure pack. There's a lot of people that enjoyed opening, but as the newness kind of wore off, it seemed like there was a little bit more criticisms in regard to the treasure packs than the other side. But that's just my observation. I'm not gonna, you know, I think they the way to do it is the subsets. Okay, and that might be it. I'm just curious of how they do it. Do they go back to yeah, exactly like you had the gold pack in Misfails where they like tried to do it right? They could. That's actually a really good example. I'm glad you mentioned that. Maybe that's the way that they kind of take a step back and kind of like reintroduce because there was nothing in Hunted, right? When you bought a box of Hunted, there was no additional shit. Rosetta, there was no additional shit. They had some really dope Marvels, right? You had the Rosetta Thorn and shit like that. Cool. Hunted, I mean, you had Slippy, but like, there's just normal hero Marvel. So I'm curious if they take another collector break, is what we're going to call it, or if they just keep it going. I'm interested. Like for this, for having variants and exclusives that are like Rosetta Thorn, rare. Yeah, and then that could be how they do it. That could be it. Gold packs really help drop the price of all the cards with how many people cracked it. It's a good point. The question is though, if you repeat something, right? Because if Magic has taught us anything, and I don't even play Magic and I know this shit, right? You have regular foil, you have Rainbow X foil, you have reverse foil, you have hollowed foil, you have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday foil, you have Thursday, Friday, Saturday foil, you have, Ruby Tuesdays on a Sunday night foil, then you have, Popeyes, that foil, we got SpongeBob foil, there is anytime you have something new, there is proportionately more dopamine that is released in engaging that activity, theoretically, with the exception of nostalgia. And so, how do you keep that going? Well, Magic figured out that they just call it something else and make it rarer, right? And then just change a little bit of aspect to it, and that's your thing. So I'm just wondering if Flesh and Blood starts teetering in that direction. I don't think they will. I'm just going to let the record show that. I don't think that they'll do that. I'm just saying that if there ever was a time where they were thinking about doing it, well, that might be it. That might be it. Whether it be for better or worse. Hunter had Slippy as an M, Scurv as a secret. Yeah, that's true. Go Pack was cool, except when you hit draft rares. Yeah, they can't all be hits. They can't be all hits. Be the hidden here in Super Saiyan. Could be. Could be. I'm interested. The set is unique to say the least. But like I mentioned earlier, I'm gonna go in with I'm gonna give it a shot. Try it out. See what's good. See what's bad. Um, Tough Nut actually has my interest the most currently. Just anybody that can play rock, like it's just a neat, fascinating idea. My guess is a weapon armor subset that has variants, fits theme of an arena as well. Hamal, my guess is that there's actually here's my hot take. I think that there's weapons that go in your deck that you can equip temporarily. Like you swing them once and they break, kind of thing. Like I don't know, like what's something that like cheaters do in fights and movies, like throwing sand in people's eyes. Like there could be like a card that you like equip and you get to like use it or something. I don't know. That'd be kind of dope. Just a thought. Like equipping from the arena. Like because an arena typically has like a bunch of weapons laying around. You just grab one and use it till it breaks, and you just go grab another one. I don't know. Just an idea. Please be a chair. I mean, that's really low hanging fruit that they would, obviously lean on. Not the pocket set. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Brass knuckle. Exactly. See, y'all know. Y'all know. That's my hot take. And that's what I'm kind of anticipating. Because I just feel like the weapon zone has to be used for something. Or it's just gonna feel weird, you know? I don't know. Hand grenades. Okay, I think we're going a little off the deep end, but I respect it. I respect it. Yeah, and maybe it's not in your deck, but maybe they're tokens and you just create them, right? Maybe need a Marvel chair. Don't we all? Don't we all? Improvise weapons, or you can swap a weapon with your. But just some. All I know is I think that there's a close to 0% chance that we play an entire limited game of Flesh and Blood and don't interact with an entire zone of the arena. That, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's got to be something. I don't know what it looks like. I'm just trying to think outside the box. Nah, equip a boat. Okay, now okay. I thought hand grenades were equip a boat. What about cards that summon allies when drawn or for Super Slam? Tag team. Okay, that's kind of dope, right? I have no clue how that would work. But that's what I'm talking about, right? Like, you got Polly that can kind of sit in that weapon zone, right? With Puffin. Maybe we got something like that. Allies that you can like draw and maybe they just like go into the weapon zone or whatever. Like, I could see it, right? Like, that would be, hell yeah. Equip the tractor. See, now we're talking. You could dual wield the tractor in a bad education system. That's what you could dual wield in Alabama. Macro is the arena turnbuckle and a foldable chair. Just raise an army for every class. All right. Maybe not that good, right? But just something. I don't know. It's just got to be something. I love the idea of like tag team, right? Like that's huge in wrestling. Like, how do you incorporate that? Um, that's a good idea, Quack. That was a good one. That was a good one. Tag team. Like, you could draw the ally and you'd have to play it. They've already set the premise for that with Gravy because we have allies in the deck. So that is already set up, good to go. They know how to do it logistically. They just make sure, and they just have to make sure that the ally is balanced, which very easy to do if it takes a whole action point / turn to like, like, there's so many ways that they could do it. There's just no way that they don't utilize that zone. There's no shot. There's zero way. Break the tokens each hero makes for a weapon that's like parry blade and breaks on use. Yeah, blade break on use. Yep, I like that. Maybe the macro card generates weapon token. Yeah, it could be anything. The only thing that has me going against the token idea is you would have to have it would induce a lot of fucking tokens, which maybe is not a problem. I mean, hell, the hunted, you had to have 13 different chaos agents that you could roll into. So I guess a couple weapons isn't asking for too much. So you could easily fit, theoretically, from like a token logistic standpoint, you could fit 3 cards, which is two on each card, one on each side. That'd be 6 weapons logistically. That's enough variety. You can have half of them be like more cheating oriented, like pocket sand, shit like that for the bad guys, and you have the good guys, and maybe it's just, I don't know what fucking weapons honorable people use or revered, whatever the fuck the word is. Um, I think they could do it. I don't know what it's gonna look like, but it's possible. Maybe they better fucking do it. We got to draft this shit at Worlds. Like, they better figure it out. Oh man. Moonshine in one hand, tractor in the other. Now we're talking. Tangent, but annoying. The box for armory decks isn't usable for cards. Oh, you're saying it's not, you can't like put it back in, is what you're saying. That's a that's a valid criticism. And that's the things that like should be voiced. Because theoretically, a very easy way to fix that is instead of wrapping it in plastic and putting it in the box, you put it into a little, just like what the first strike decks are in, those little, no extra space holders, basically, is what it is. And then you just put that in the box. Sure, your costs are going to go up just a little bit, but it can't be that much. But you're right. You open the product, You play with the cards. Theoretically, you would buy it right before you played an armory. You'd play the armory with the cards, and then what do you just walk out of the LGS holding your deck? You're right. You have to have a place to put it. And somebody that is coming to the game from a casual enough perspective to play with an armory deck at an armory, I would not assume that person to have a deck box nor a deck box with space in it, right? Because maybe they're there to play a different game. They brought like their commander deck that has like 1,300 cards in it, and it's this thick. And they don't have room. They have a deck box, but it's full, right? Nobody's going to take their commander deck out so they can put a $40 armory deck in it. So now they have to like just throw all the loose cards like that. That's actually a valid criticism. That's actually really good. Armory deck should come pre-sleeved in a deck box. Now you're talking expensive. I would not do that. Just yes, that presents a better product to the customer, obviously. But the amount of money you would spend to do that would not be a one-to-one translation to value to the customer. That is a very inefficient way to provide the customer value. Are you cosplaying Goliath at Worlds? I knew it was coming. Definitely not. Definitely not. I think all the basic slots are spoken for between heroes and the confidence, vigor, etc. tokens. So no chance for basic token weapons. I guess they're going in the deck. I'm ready for the wrestling belt trophy at Worlds. I mean, you know it's coming. You know it's coming. Why dash over Puffin? I can't figure out Puffin. I'm tired of making a bunch of cogs and then not drawing cards to utilize the cogs, or drawing a bunch of dovetails and not having cogs. You literally have to play the deck in a way to where you arsenal one and you wait for the other, and it's not a very fun way to play optimally. You're just waiting. You're just like rotating out of your arsenal. That's all you're doing, and it's not, kind of loses all of the explosiveness, all the flair of the deck, kind of thing. The Star Wars Unlimited starter decks came with a little cardboard deck box inside the kit. Really nice. Yeah, that's a great idea. It's a great idea. That could be maybe for tag team 2 hero format, same class. When active hero gets hit, swap tag the hero, spin. Yeah. Someone start a GoFundMe for Nathan's live cosplay. I'm average height. I'm exceptionally average at height. Literally to a T. Oh, I get it. You're saying I have 5 intellect. That is so sweet. That is just so nice of you to say that I'm that intelligent compared to every other hero. I appreciate that. Maybe I should cosplay it. That's how you get classic battles, Dory versus Reinhardt prices. Exactly. Exactly. One of the new L's isn't a wrestling championship trophy. I'm gonna be mad. Where would you equip said trophy? Are you saying that that's like the Fable is like a trophy? I mean, I could see that. It's just like maybe it's. I could see it. It couldn't be equipment. I guess it could be an offhand. Smack the shit out of somebody with a trophy. I don't know. No telling. Don't get crazy. Would never. Never. Tough Nut is more like the Alabama education, right? You could not be more correct. Um, calm down there, Jordan. Don't you want to show us the Katsu spice that led all of you to put Katsu at A? So I think everybody is experimenting with Edge of Autumn Katsu and kind of and it all kind of traces back to it gives you more 0 for 4 flexibility, but also it gives you renewed usage of the arm piece, right? Which applies to any ninja attack. So you can literally breaking scales, surging strike, and be like water, and all of these high value premium targets, which results. What was the number one thing I said before? I said the number one thing that has to be solved is consistency. Well, if you can guarantee that that first attack hits, that seems pretty fucking consistent to me, is all I'm saying. When you can tutor the first time you hit every turn. Just saying. Need more. You need more evidence. I hope that's enough to get you started. Hopefully, putting just brings it to the PT and just wins it all, and then that's all the proof you'll ever need. I think that a premium version of the armory deck would be cool. Vanguard did a similar thing where you got a themed deck box sleeves. Well, given the recent situations, the Aurora armory decks and stuff like that, the last thing that I would do right now is ask LGSs to buy more different products, because a lot of stores are probably having issues moving that particular product right now. So I like the idea. I think it's a good idea. I just think that you could not even think about implementing it for the next year. Macro, where the crowd throws weapons into the arena. See? Oh, that's how you could do it. What if what if there was an aura that sat on the field and it said, whenever you get booed, like there'll be a good one, there'll be a bad one. And it'll say, whenever you get cheered, put a counter on it. And then when this thing has 3 or 2 count or whatever, you get this weapon. Yeah. Yeah. That way, you get booed 3 times, you get thrown a weapon. Like, it's kind of good, right? I mean, I don't know if it's good. I'm just saying that's a decent idea. Turns out there's like no fucking weapons, period. It would baffle me if the weapon zone was not utilized in any way. It would just blow my mind. Maybe it's not. I'm not saying to be a bad thing. I'd be like, damn, that's a whole empty ass space. I know what to do with it. Thoughts on a collector's version of the armory deck, like Magic, recent FF release? I don't think the game's gotten to that point. Once again, I just don't think we're getting to the point with the number of products that LSS is releasing. From an LGS perspective, the thing that you have to manage with Flesh and Blood right now is shelf space, right? The way that you should divide your shelf space is you should theoretically, from a theoretical standpoint, if X% of your customers play this game, that percentage of the shelf space should be that game. So let's say that an average shelf space for Flesh and Blood, based on just statistics or whatever the case would be, maybe it's 20% of your player base when you factor in, which is a decent number because you got Yu-Gi-Oh, you got Pokemon, you got Magic. So like 20% is pretty generous, if I'm being honest. Well, there's not that much space with 20% of your shelves, right? So you can't have like Aurora Armory deck, Aurora Armory deck plus, Aurora deck Armory minus. You're asking for a lot of display space. Uh, and for those products, it particularly matters because your selling point for your sales throughput is in the store, physically viewing the product if you're not already an established player. And so I think that there needs to be a much larger player base before we start getting crazy with the number of products that are released, mainly due to shelf space. Three boos and it's the chair. The lone throne rose turns into Rosetta Thorn. Now we're talking. So why isn't value what it used to be? We already went over it. We went in, it was the very first thing I discussed. Talked about the evolution of value, all kind of stuff. All right. Well, we've been going for just about 2 hours. So I think I'm ready to call it. But for anybody that's going to Singapore, already there, I wish you the best of luck at your tournaments. I hope you had safe travels. I hope none of your flights got delayed. And I hope you have an equal time getting back to wherever home is. I hope you have you know, an absolute blast. And for those of you that are not, I hope you enjoy watching it. Um, Ethan, of course, is always going to knock it out of the park on the coverage. It'll be great. I can't wait to see how they have found a way out of nowhere to just make it even better. I'm curious of how they're going to do it because we know it's coming. And yeah, I appreciate everybody joining me, especially for um, X-Men vending takes a lot of me. Hopefully, I don't X3 drop. That's right. That's right. Hey, the vendor saved the day at US Nats. I'll tell you that much. That was a shit show. And we got bailed out by people that were willing to just figure it out. But hope everybody has a good rest of their night. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next week with a lot to talk about. PT results, what happened, what didn't happen, and yeah, I'm interested to see how it all plays out. And maybe there's some more evolutions in draft as well. You just never know. Thanks everybody for joining me.